Hello, it's Megan Ritz with Classic Cakes, and today we are going to make a gum paste flower. We're going to focus on a rose, and I'm just going to pull us up on my laptop here so I can see comments. We're going to focus on a rose today. It's a very easy flower to learn. If you have Play-Doh at home, you can actually grab some Play-Doh and make one alongside me if you want to play. So, let me see here, pop-ups. I'm going to find us on here. There we go. Turn my volume off. Perfect. I've got comments popping up. So we are going to make a gum paste rose. I'm going to show you all of our tools, and we're going to take this beautiful ball of gum paste and turn it into a beautiful flower. And this is something that you guys can do. If you've got Play-Doh at home, grab some. You can totally play along with me. We're just going to make a white rose today, and then I'm going to do another video and show you all about coloring and how to make your like dry brush coloring on your flowers to make them pop and make them look even more real. So today is going to be the actual building of a flower out of gum paste. So a couple of things. We are going to be live. I am going to be live on another page. Life According to Food is my savory food world. So I'm going to be live Wednesday night making pizza from scratch in honor of Terry Towner. We are going to do a pizza sauce and a pizza dough from scratch, and I'll show you all of that. It is one of my favorite recipes, so I'm super excited to get to share that with you. And then on Thursday I will be live on this page, and I'm going to post tonight 4 pictures of 4 different designs. And you can vote on whichever one you want me to do, and I will do that design live start to finish so you guys can see how it's done, and we'll just play on Thursday night. If you are still wanting a cake for Easter, you've got to get that order in. Yes, Terry Pizza. Super excited about that. Also, my husband is, because he gets to eat it. If you want to order an Easter cake for this Saturday, we are still taking orders. We're very close to cutting off, so send me an email, cake@classiccakescarmel.com tonight, and we will sneak you in with an order. I think we're ready to get started. So let me flip the camera around and I will show you guys what we have. But before I do that, I'm going to show you how I roll out the gum paste. This is something that you can do at home just with a rolling pin, but we have a very fancy toy and I want to show it off for you guys. So gum paste is similar to fondant, and that it is a dough that you can roll out, you can shape, you can mold, and then what happens with the fondant is it stays relatively soft. So you can, it's kind of like a rolled out Tootsie Roll. It's got a dense texture, but it's soft, whereas gum paste gets hard and brittle. So what happens is you can make something that stands up out of the cake and it will hold its shape once it dries. So flowers are really nice to use with gum paste because of that, because it will, you can make whatever shape flower you want, however big, and mold the petals to be exactly the shape that you want, and then they will actually hold their shape that way. So let me show you when we roll this out. It's a very smooth dough. And what we do when we make this, it starts with a meringue powder, powdered sugar, Tylose, which makes it stretchy, a little bit of shortening and water, and we make these in big batches, and then what we'll do is we cover the whole ball in just a really thin like smear of shortening, and that keeps it nice and moist. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to knead this. And I'm going to turn you guys over here with me. We are going to go over here. This beautiful machine is called a sheeter. And we're actually going to roll out, we can use it for fondant, for gum paste, for pasta, for cookies, like whatever you want to make. It's like the holy grail of a pasta maker where it rolls out a sheet. So I'm going to take this guy here. Let me see if you can see. And I don't need anything on the surface with stainless steel. It doesn't stick. It's very nice. You can use rolled out powdered sugar if you'd like. And I'm just going to knead it really rough. So anything that sticks I can just roll back in. I'm just going to flatten it roughly with my hand. I'm not worried about it being pretty or a particular shape. You can also take a rolling pin and you can flatten it like this. Again, you just want it thin enough to easily feed through the sheeter. If you do not have a sheeter or a pasta maker, then you can just roll it out by hand with the rolling pin. I would roll it out in small batches because you want it really thin. So you'll see how big this is. And then we're going to roll it out on the sheeter. So bigger number is a wider setting, so we're going to start wide, and it is loud, so I apologize for that. And then we're going to make it small. When it starts to stick like that, we can take some powdered sugar, which I have somewhere. And I'm going to do the table too. And I just feed the powdered sugar into the machine so that it glides through with it. So we've got a pretty thin, like if I was making pasta, this would be beautiful. We've got a pretty thin sheet here. I want to keep going. I want to make it even thinner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half so that as it gets thin, it starts to stretch. And I don't want it to stretch too thin. I want a really even layer. So I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to take my pizza cutter and just cut it in half. I'm going to take that plastic that it was wrapped in and I'm going to cover up that other half so I can save it. This dries out really fast, so you want to make sure that you have it covered at all times. So I'm just going to keep rolling this guy out. We're going to go a little bit thinner. Alright, so we have a nice thin. I'm going to go even thinner one more time, and they'll have nice thin petals. For flowers, you want it to be really thin because you want those petals to be really thin and delicate, more like a real flower. Alright, so we've got a nice sheet of gum paste here. I'm going to set this on the table over here, and then I'm going to show you guys what we have going on. So let me get this out of the way. And I'm going to flip this camera around and show you what tools we have to work with so we can start working on that flower. If you have Play-Doh at home, go grab it. You can totally play along. Alright, so I've got lots of toys. Let me get a good angle here. I've got lots of toys here to make these flowers. And some of these things I just wanted to show you how you can use them, what they're for. We're not going to use all of these for this particular flower. Alright, cool. Alright, so we've got lots of cool stuff here. These are a bunch of different tools that you can use. I've got more here. I love these big fat ones. We use these to shape the petals. You can use skinny ones as well. You can use ball rollers here to smooth the petals, and I'll show you how these guys work. A lot of this stuff, we've got some clay tools. A lot of the stuff we're not going to use for these flowers in particular, but they are great for fondant work. There's smaller ones as well. And for working on things with gum paste. Especially if you're doing like hand molded things, a lot of these are really nice. These also work to like ruffle the edges of a piece of gum paste. I don't particularly like doing that. I feel like I don't have as much control. It is easier to use when you're starting. Hey Dibby, thanks for jumping on. Terry Toner says, what does this taste like? Not much. I wouldn't say that it has much flavor at all. Kids enjoy partaking, but that's really it. Especially if we cover it in glitter or something like that. So I've got a X-Acto knife. I'm going to use that a lot. I'm going to stick that up there so I'm safe. When I roll out my petals, I will actually roll them out on this pad. There are lots of different types of pads. It doesn't particularly matter. It's just whatever style works best for you. So I'm gonna stick those up here. This is a pantyhose. We fill it with cornstarch, and then I can dust my surface to keep it from getting sticky. You wanna make sure that your hands are dry all times. Any moisture is gonna make this gum paste very glue-like. Speaking of moisture, when I need to glue pieces together, we use our handy dandy vodka. I'm gonna put a little bit in a cap right here. And I will use that with my little paintbrush to glue petals together, to glue the petals to the main part of the flower. These molds I'll use as a frame to let them dry. So it's gonna start off very soft, and then as we go, it's going to dry more. So we've got these guys out of the way. What else do I have here? Here's my lovely piece of gum paste. It's nice and thin, it's very soft. And I want another piece here. Cover that up. Make sure I don't dry out. Beautiful. What else do I have? These are a bunch of cutters. So these are flower cutters. We're going to start with these guys, and I'm going to show you a very simple way to make a rose in one big piece, which is very cool. Debbie, Sandy, Terry, thank you guys for joining us. Pantyhose, yes. So this works really well to dust the surface without it having too much. When you have a big shaker, you end up with way too much. So just a clean pair of pantyhose that you can fill them with the cornstarch and then tie it off. So individual petal cutters, if we have time, we'll do some individual petals, and I'll show you guys how to make roses this way. This is actually my preferred way, but it is a little bit more advanced. And then we have some beautiful flower veiners here. So you can actually do individual petals and then press them, and then you'll get beautiful veins. So I'm hoping we'll have some time for that today as well. Let's get those out of the way. All right, and then this is the beautiful little leaf that wraps around the bottom of the flower. So I like to use a little cutter like this so that I can frame that up around the flower as well. So if we're getting started, before we even cut out any flowers, what we're actually gonna do is I'm just gonna cut a scrap piece here and ball it back up. We need to make the frame, the base for the flower. So I'm just gonna ball this up, and I'm gonna roll it into a nice ball. And then I'm gonna use the edge of my hand to make a teardrop shape. And then we can just push that in. So that's too big. I'm gonna take a little less here. So just pushing on the edge to make the teardrop. And this is going to be the base that we frame all of our petals around. So I'm just going to set him right there. Now we're going to start small, and we're going to work bigger and bigger. We're going to start in the inside of our flower and frame it around this little guy. So I'm just going to cut out my first round of petals. With these guys, you do have to kind of smack them to get them out. You can use a X-Acto to start it. This gum paste is very soft, so it's a little bit stickier. All right, now I'm going to show you guys how this works. So before we actually put this around here, we can use one of these guys, and we're just gonna very gently roll it around to thin that edge. You want that edge to be really thin, really delicate, so that it looks more like a real flower. And if you start in the middle and work your way out, you get that cupping, so that again, it looks more like a bloomed flower. You don't want them to be perfectly flat. So I can use this, I can use this. They all do the same thing. So it's just a personal preference. The little guy are a little bit more, because it's a smaller surface area. So I feel like for smaller details, it works really well, but you're gonna end up very ruffly with that. So my favorite is officially this guy right here. I love it. It's a little weighted, so it works nicely. And I'm just gonna do the outside edge so that I'm nice and delicate. And then I can go back around and thin out the entire petal. Just with circles. I feel like this is very therapeutic to do. So any questions you guys have, feel free to ask. Just make a comment. I may miss them, but anything I miss, I will go back and answer afterwards. I definitely feel like I'm kind of in the zone and not paying attention to the comments, so I'm gonna try and watch that. Sandy asks, do we make our own gum paste? We do. I like having more control over it. So I'm gonna push a little bit harder and spread these petals out just a little bit more. And if you push harder on this foam, you actually can start to get like a wavy petal, and that's what I really like, where they start to ruffle a little bit. So I'm gonna take my first round and I'm gonna wrap it around this guy. And how we're gonna do that, I'm gonna take my vodka here, and just enough to make it damp, I'm gonna do one edge of each petal, the same edge, and the middle. And oh dear. Well, now we have vodka everywhere. We'll just use it from there. So I'm gonna set him in the middle, and then I'm gonna take that wet edge and wrap it around. And I'm just gonna tuck them all in. And that vodka is gonna make it wet and it's gonna stick right away. So it's gonna act like glue. So I have this weird pinwheel shape going on. So now I can pick this up, flip it over, take my brush. We're just gonna enjoy the mess. I'm not even gonna worry about it. And I'm gonna do the rest of that petal. And then I'm just gonna wrap it around. So we're just tucking it in the spiral that it's already created. I'm sorry, Maddie said, what if you want to do like a rose look? Okay, so Maddie, welcome. We are actually doing a rose today. And we're just going to tuck these little guys around. And I'm making that center. I want a really tight tuck in the middle, and then all the petals. So I'm just pushing to tighten that center. I don't want a hole in the middle. I want it to look like a really tight bud. So this is that first row. If these are out like this, totally fine. I love it. It's beautiful. Every flower is going to be a little bit unique, a little bit different. I'm going to do the same size cutter for the next row. Now these guys, we want to make sure they stay dry or I'll have sticky petals. So this is where this guy comes in really handy. I can just tap that. That mess is going to be a problem. Let me grab a towel. So I've got my sanitizer here. We'll just clean this up real quick and that will dry. Okay, so I want to be really careful about my hands are now damp. So again, this is just cornstarch, but it helps keep things dry. All right, so I got my first flower, or my next row of petals here, same size. Just gonna clean up the edges. Looks like I lost you guys on the laptop, but I think I'm still going live on my camera here. Normally I just whack it a few times, but I don't want to be super loud and obnoxious for you guys on here, so we'll just gently take it out. Okay, so next row, exactly the same thing. Let me see if I can reload this. looks like I lost my feed on my laptop. So I'm just gonna lower this so I can see the comments. Awesome, so same thing, make sure nice and dry. And we are going to do the outside edge really gently. We want to taper it so it's nice and thin like a real flower. The thinner you can make it, the more delicate the flower is, but also the more fragile it is. So just keep that in mind. The thinner you make it, the more realistic it may look, but the easier it is to break it. So I'm just going to stretch these guys out a little bit. And you can see how we have cracking here. That's because I have this sitting out. Normally I would want to cover this the entire time so that it doesn't dry out, which I probably should do now. So a little bit of cracking I'm not worried about. It won't be noticeable on the flower. But it's just not as fun when it's imperfect, right? Okay, so I never make my petals damp when they're on there because that is going to hold a lot of moisture. So let's refill my vodka. And I just have a little bit in the cap here. And I'll put it over there so I don't make a mess. So again, the bottom, and then I like to do just one side of each petal. We're going to do the same exact thing. So the wet side goes in. I wonder if I skipped that one. Oh. The wet side goes, it gets attached. So we have this pinwheel. Then we're going to flip it upside down. And I'm going to wet the rest of this exposed side. Very damp brush, not soaking, not making a mess. And we're just going to wrap those around. So each layer is going to be more open. So we want to keep this tight so that it can look like it's blooming. And I actually like to fold over a few of them so it's not straight up and down. Right? We want to make it look like it's opening from a close, not just opening like this. So I'm just going to use my finger. Alright, beautiful. So now the next row. So I'm going to cover this. So we did the smallest one. Now we're going to do the next size. Alright, so this cut, when it's really damp like this, when it's really soft, fresh gum paste, it can cut a little bit imperfect. So that's when we can just take our X-Acto, and I'm not worried about the inside here, but I want the edges up here to be nice and smooth. So I'm just going to shave those little bits off. And this like attention to the little details really goes a long way. Alright. So again, I'm not worried about this part, but up here I want it to be nice and smooth. So we're going to do the same thing to this guy. And we're just going to keep doing each row. And as we get to the bigger rows, it gets a little bit more interesting with how we frame them, how we shape them, and how we have it dry so that it holds that shape. But these first few rows are pretty straightforward. We're going to do the edge. And now you're going to see, I'm going to focus a little bit more on shaping the edge so that it's almost ruffly rather than being straight, because you're gonna see a lot more of it. So the first few, it doesn't really make a big difference. You can kind of get away with making it easy. And then we're gonna start to shape these petals by pulling them out. We just don't want it to be perfectly smooth, right? So if we pull it out a little bit, then we end up with those little ruffly bits, those little uneven parts that make it look more natural. You can also, on the edge, press really firmly and you end up with ruffles. So I'm just gonna go around and ruffle those edges. So here it got a little damp, not a problem. So you can see how delicate and transparent the edges start to get, and they get that ruffly pattern. That's what we want. So again, this same thing, edge, and then we're just gonna sit this guy in the middle here. So same thing, we're gonna tuck these guys and make a little pinwheel. And you can see it's starting to come together into a nice rose. So we're gonna take our pinwheel and we're gonna flip it upside down. And I'm gonna do this edge here. Now, important part here. In the bud, it doesn't matter as much, but here I'm only wetting this edge. I'm not wetting the top part. So it's just the one side and then the very bottom, so that it stays open like this. And we want to make sure we're not making it too tight, whereas the bud, we wanted it to be really tight. Here we want it to be more open so that those petals look like they're opening. You can also, let me get one of these guys, one of my tools here. You can take a needle tool like this, or there's another one that I really like. This little guy like here. And we can roll the petals to make it look more like it's folding. And as this dries, they will hold their shape. The heavier the piece of gum paste, the more support you need for it. So for little petals like this, we can just leave them and they will hold their shape like this nicely. And then as we get bigger petals, I will show you guys how we're gonna hold that support. So you can see how you can kind of fold it to make it roll. And then it has that blooming effect where they like roll out. Nellie asks, how do you know when you move up a size? So that's a really good question. What I like to do, it depends how many rows of petals you want. So if you want tons of petals, then you want to move up slower. I like to make that first row that's wrapped around it and the second row the same. So I have that first row that's really tight and then the next row that's a little bit looser. And then I'm gonna actually make all these next rows different sizes. So one up and then the next. Okay, cool. So this is our nice little rolled flowers. I can also use this tool if I want to separate any of these guys now that I have that first row, because they're not totally dry yet. So I can play with them to make them lay the way that I want. So now is the part where we have to start to be gentle with this, because we have those petals shaped and we don't want to mess them up. So that's our second row. So now we're going to make our third row, or I'm sorry, our third size. All right, so next row. And you can just make your edges smooth like this if they're not too bad. You can just pop this guy right out of here. I like the delicate work of playing with these petals. find it very relaxing, very rewarding. So I'm glad I'm still up because my laptop says I have no internet. So I'm just gonna move you out of the way. You are not helpful. I'm gonna drink some water. All right, guys. I have been at home all day screaming and being wild and playing with my 3-year-old, and I feel like I'm losing my voice. Okay, let's move our beautiful flower out of the way. So, exact same thing. I love these. I haven't used a whole lot of these. I'm used to this here, which works equally good, but this is weighted, and so it kind of does the work for you. You don't have to push nearly as much. It's a more gentle way to do it. I like that. All right, so again, first thing we do is we make the edges really thin and delicate. Then we're gonna go in and stretch the main petal, and then we're gonna ruffle it. Now, I don't know that there's a definitive way to do all of this. That's just what I like to do. Cool. So little circles, and we can stretch. And this is very relaxing. We make a lot of our own gum paste here. Actually, one of our girls, Sarah, here tonight is gonna make a 3D gum paste shoe, a high heel. We can do just about anything, honestly, in gum paste, which is very cool. Lots of different techniques are required depending on what you're making, but it's very rewarding. So we're just gonna stretch these out to make them a little bit longer. They don't all have to be perfectly even, by the way. Real flowers are all going to be a little bit different, so you don't have to worry about making it perfect. I'm going to press a little bit harder and just ruffle these edges. Awesome. So we've got nice big ones, big petals here. So we're gonna put this next guy on here. And I'm gonna take my paintbrush and a little bit of vodka, base, and one side of each petal. All right, so our flower's a little crooked. It does not matter. I don't care at all. You can always like mush the bottom to try and straighten it, but honestly it does not matter. And again, every flower in real life is going to be a little bit different, so don't try and make every flower exactly identical. So I'm gonna set these guys on the outside. So I've got this petal here, I'm gonna tuck it in and put these on the outside because this is that next row of petals. Okay, and you can see they're getting heavier, so they're not really pinwheeling anymore. That's totally fine. Just gonna flip it over. I'm gonna do the bottom part here. And we're gonna wrap these guys. Now this is where we're gonna have to really start forming things. Because they're getting heavy. So I'm going to take this adorable little tool, and I rolled this way, so I'm going to roll the same way. And you don't have to roll every petal, but I would recommend rolling them all in the same direction so that it looks like it's like spiraling out. That is a more natural look for a rose. Every flower is a little bit different too. You can also pinch the ends of some of them. Rolling these guys is quite easy. So these are very droopy because they are getting heavier. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use one of these guys. I'm gonna take my cornstarch and I'm just gonna gently dust it. I don't need like a big amount. I just want to make sure that it's not sticky because there's going to be some liquid on here. So let's do we're looking more like a gardenia right now. So let's do our next row of petals before those start to dry, and then I'll show you how to shape them. So, huge guy. I don't particularly like using this guy. I feel like he's too giant unless I want a huge rose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this guy again instead, and I'm just going to stretch him out even more to make those petals even bigger. I'm just stuck to my table. So I have not very pretty. So again, I'm not gonna waste the gum paste and roll it out again. I'm just gonna trim this edge up. You don't have to worry about these bits in here. But these outside edges, we want them to be nice and smooth. All right, cool. So we're gonna put him on here again. Throw me some hearts if you see it, if it's turning into a rose. So we're gonna do these outside edges. And then I'm just gonna stretch them wider. So you can stretch them longer, you can stretch them whatever way you want really. But I like making my roses very round. So I'm gonna stretch them wider. And if you have any Play-Doh at home, I'm going to show you another technique to make a rose, which you can use at home with your kids. I totally made some Play-Doh roses for my kiddo the other day. He made me do them in every color. It was hilarious. So we're going to do a one petal at a time technique. Different technique, both are beautiful. I like the individual petal technique because I feel like I have more control. And this, I get 5 petals for every row, no matter what. Now there are cheats that you can do. You can cut them. But I like the individual ones. Alright, so I have a torn piece there. I'm not even going to worry about it. We will hide it. Okay, so let's do our vodka on our edges. We'll just make that the bottom edge. Now we're going to gently pick her up. Oh, it's a girl. And I'm making sure that my petals are in the holes, not directly under another petal. Alright, so now I'm going to just set this just like this. So I have these rows of petals, and not much is happening here. So I'm going to go around, and I roll this way. If I want to roll any of them, which I do, but not all of them, I'm going to do that now. And gently tuck them. If I want to fold any of them, I'm going to do that now too. Then I'm going to take some foam, packing foam. You can use paper. I'm just going to cut a row. These are actually from packages of Gumpaste flowers. We make some, we buy some. It is much cheaper for us to purchase Gumpaste flowers than to hand make them. So we buy the ones that we think are beautiful, save our customers a little bit of money. And then the ones that we can't find what we would consider adequate versions of, then we go ahead and hand make them, which is my preference anyway, so everybody wins. Let's see. Kristen, I cannot see your whole comment, but you are so welcome. I love getting to do this kind of stuff. I've had so much fun getting on live and talking to you guys and being part of the world during this time. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to take these little guys and I'm going to tuck them underneath, in between every single petal from those rows. So my last 2 rows felt a little heavy. And this is going to make sure that they don't dry flat on each other. I don't want it to be sad and droopy, right? We want it to look like this flower is alive and happy and well. So you can stick these, like I said, you can use folded pieces of paper. I like the foam, but it's a very specific size. So it just depends what works for you and what size you need. You want to be careful about not cramming them in there. You're just gently setting them in there so that it holds things the shape that you want. And also, I'm not putting them under, like I put 2 under this one, but I'm not doing that under all of them. So you want it to be a little bit uneven. Some of them are higher, some of them have more, because you want it to be more natural. If you make everything exactly the same, that's not natural. So I can also shove a few in here, so my already starting to dry petals, to make sure that they stay exactly where I want them, and make sure that they fold. So we have a really nice start to a rose here. I have beautiful like levels of petals here. We just want to make sure. I like lots of foam. I want this sucker to be locked in exactly where I want him. Nobody can move him. Let's put another one over here. See, now this guy I feel like is just laying in there sad, so I'm going to stick another one under there. So it's all just personal preference. How closed or open do you want these rows of petals to be? I want it really like tucked around and wrapped. And then this foam looks like this. It's a dome, so the bottom of your flower will be a nice cup as well. So that's really it for the rose. I'm going to show you a whole different technique where we do individually and we press the petals. And the cool thing about that is if you guys have any Play-Doh at home, go grab it. Go grab your Play-Doh. You guys are going to play along with me right now. Alright, so we have a rose. I'm going to do another video and show you guys the technique for actually coloring the flowers, because this actually has to dry before we can color it. Now you can start with a colored gum paste instead of white, but I like, again, if you guys know me, you will learn, I like control. I like control over every little teeny tiny detail. Okay, so I have my little scrap of gum paste here. Now I've got this beautiful mold that will press. When I cut out those petals, I'm going to press it, and then I'll have all these little beautiful petal veins in my flower. And I have all of these beautiful petal cutters, all different size, different kits, different sets. Let's start with more medium-y. We don't need to make a huge flower. Let's start with these guys here. So you guys don't need these. If you are going to play along at home, throw me some hearts if you've got some Play-Doh out and you're going to play along right now too, and I will show you how to do that. Alright, so I'm just kneading a small ball. Same way we started the other rows. I don't want it to be very big, just a small piece. And I am going to roll it into a ball. Just slight pressure makes a nice ball. And then I'm going to use the edge of my hand to make a teardrop shape. That's it. That is going to be the center of the flower, the base of my flower. So you can just live right there. Alright, now we're going to start with the smallest ones and work our way out, same as before. So let's do a few of these guys, and I can just, let's see, I can just lay them in here when they're small like this. Let's start with 3. And then, so in my little mold, all I'm going to do is nice pressure, and then I'll have some texture on that. So you can see that beautiful texture. Now when I paint that, when I make that colorful, oh my god, it's gonna be gorgeous. So let's make a few rows. We're gonna get the vodka out. We're gonna make our flour. If we work fast, we can just do it this way. If you're playing at home with fondant, you can actually just take a glob of whatever piece of Play-Doh, with Play-Doh, and you can press it into the shape of a petal just by pinching with your hand. And then you can wrap those around. So you can totally just play that way. All right, cool. So I'm gonna want some of these, and I'm just keeping the different sizes separate. So I know first row, second row, I'm gonna do 3 and 5. I like odd numbers. I don't know about you guys, but aesthetically, I feel like even numbers just aren't as pleasing unless it's like perfectly symmetrical. So let's press these guys. All right, cool. We have some beautifully pressed petals to start with. So I'm gonna need this guy over here. I don't need you. I do need my vodka. So I'm gonna start with my first 3, and I'm gonna do the one side. Same thing, guys, just one side. I'm gonna wrap them around to make that pinwheel that we started with before. Instead of 5, I just have 3. All right, now I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna do that edge. And I'm gonna wrap them. And I want this center to be really tight. So I'm gonna spin around until that's nice and tight. I don't want a big hole in the middle. I want completely blooming budded flower. So that is my initial bud. Not much to write home about. Very simple. Gonna look beautiful. So we can just set you in there. I'm gonna take my cornstarch and give it a little love. My next rose. So the wetter you make these, like this has a lot of liquid on it, it's gonna be like slippery. It's gonna wanna slide around on me instead of being just sticky and stay exactly where I put it. So just something to keep in mind. So I'm just gonna tuck these guys over, and I'm just tucking them on the bottom as well. Let's wrap this around. And that next guy, we can fit him in. I'm not worried about it being all perfect and symmetrical, right? We want it to be uneven and natural. Let's do my edges. I love making flowers. I feel like it's just peaceful, relaxing. Okay, so I've got really tall petals compared to my flowers, so I'm actually just gonna slide them down and make them shorter. I want it to look like they're, do you see that difference? I want it to look like they were opening this way, like from a fist, not from a talking Muppet hand. All right, cool. So this is very rigid. I don't like rigid. I want nice, delicate flower petals like we have up here. Beautiful. So I can do the exact same thing, and I can roll these guys. You see the difference when they're rolled? Oh, it just makes it look so much more alive. So we can fold some of those over a little bit tighter. Some of those can be gentle. Every flower can be a little bit different. And then I'm just gonna tuck those. So let's do the next one. Just gonna lay you down, and then just the next size up petal. It doesn't have to be the exact same shape. You can see these are longer and these are rounder. Totally fine. Let's just make a smaller one. Let's do 5. All right. Same thing, gonna press these. The bigger petals, you can see that imprint even more exaggerated. And when you press, this thins them out too. So I like to like roll when I press to make sure the ends are really thin. And there's really no point in doing it unless you really get that impression mat on there. So really press hard. Make it count. All right. Brush. Found you. So again, we're going to get to that point where the bigger petals are going to be heavier and going to need more help. So this is going to be my last row. I'm just going to make a smaller flower. Again, I'm tucking them on the bottom and then up. We're going to make that pinwheel. I'm just going to tuck these inside of each other a little bit. This is where making them individually can be a little bit frustrating or more difficult, because you want to hold them all in place while you're putting them in, and you want to layer them. So you don't want them on top of each other. You want one side on top, the other side underneath. So I'm going to tuck these under. When I'm making it with the cutter, like this, they all kind of hold on together, so it's a little bit easier that way. All right, so let's do the side. Make sure they all stay where they're told. All right, so now we're going to roll these guys again too. Now, if you're not careful, this will end up looking more like a gardenia, which honestly today I don't mind. But if you're making a rose, then you want to be careful, because our gardenias have those like really exaggerated rolls like we're doing here. I just feel like it makes it look like the flower is unfolding, coming to life, and it's beautiful. Alright, so you can see how we have these nice like layers of petals. That's what I like. It's not perfectly round. I like that too. So it's just personal preference, what works for you. I do have excess down here, so I can just very gently trim those excess pieces, and then I have a nice bottom for my flower. So we're going to do the same thing with this guy that we did for the other one. We're going to set him in here, and then we're going to take our little foam pieces and we're going to take good care of them. We're going to wrap them up. So with smaller flowers, which is what I wanted to show you guys, you may need a little extra support when they sit in that mold. So you can just take a strip and you can wrap it around the outside petals so that it stays nice and tight. And then I can stick these guys wherever I would like. When you have smaller petals like this, you don't need as much of these because they do hold their shape rather nicely. So I'm actually not going to do any, and we're just going to see how this dries, see how this comes together. So I love this. You can see the impression mat on here, where you have a lot more texture, more natural, and then these are smooth. On this one, we rolled all the petals, whereas here we only rolled some of them. So you can see they're a little bit different that way. It's really just personal preference. So these are gonna dry, and then I'll be able to take all that foam out of there. I would let them sit, if you're not on the clock, I would let them sit overnight. That gives you the best dry so that they're not gonna fall apart. Like I said, they are brittle as they dry, so you wanna keep an eye on that as well. I'm gonna do another live and show you guys how to color these and what they look like when they're done, how we can make some leaves to go along with them, and really pull the whole cake together with these flowers. So if you love this, throw me some hearts. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you feel confident making some flowers on your own. And this is Megan Ritz with Classic Cakes in Indiana. Thank you so much for joining us.